And for the third and final week of the Minnesota Vikings preseason, they will go to take on the Kansas City Cheifs at Arrowhead Stadium this Friday, 7 o'clock Central. You can watch this game on ABC, CBS, and Fox, and the Vikings are 0-2 in the preseason going into this game, as the Chiefs are 2-0 in the preseason. And like I said many times on this channel, there is no need to panic. I mean, you look at how great the Vikings defense is doing and how good the Vikings special teams did last week. We really are progressing when it comes to the spots where we needed to see development, as last year we were terrible on defense and special teams. We already know how good the Vikings offense is. Obviously, we haven't seen any of Dalvin Cook, Alexander Madison. You don't want to risk them getting injured. We also haven't seen our star wide receiver, Justin Jefferson. And we haven't seen much of Irv Smith Jr. too, who's going to be our breakout player, and it's almost certain that he's going to be our breakout player unless if injuries ruin that. So first, speaking of injuries, let's take a look into the Vikings injury report. So there's a long list of Vikings injuries. Starting us off with running back Kainene Nwanu. Vikings drafted in the 4th round of this year's draft, suffered with a knee injury on kickoff against the Broncos week 1 of the preseason and is ruled out for the 3rd preseason game against the Kansas City Chiefs. Kainene Nwanu, the player that I said Vikings was going to be our breakout player this preseason, and you hate to see it after all the injuries we've seen at the running back position from the Vikings in the past few years. Having another running back who's getting injured is terrible to see. I would expect that Kainene Nwanu would be placed on the IR list and likely out the first half of the season, and we're going to see a lot of Amir Abdullah and even AJ Rose, who will likely be on the practice squad at the start, but I'd expect to see some of AJ Rose as well. Adam Thielen is also ruled out with a thigh injury after suffering with an injury last week in the preseason game against the Indianapolis Colts. Adam Thielen, it's not a serious injury, but he is ruled out because they don't want to risk this injury getting worse, and it's a preseason game, so you want to keep him healthy for the regular season. So Adam Thielen will not play. Janarius Robinson, defensive end drafted in the 4th round of this year's draft, has been placed on IR with a leg injury. Vikings were really quick to place Janarius Robinson on IR, and that comes to show how bad of an injury this could be. We haven't got a lot of updates on the Janarius Robinson injury, but there's a couple possibilities on why he was placed on IR so quick. And one of them would be that the injury is terrible and they already knew that he's going to be out at least half of the season. And then the other could be that the Vikings really just wanted to put him on IR because they wanted to open up a roster spot for someone else. And then also, we don't really need him. When you take a look at it, you want to see Janarius Robinson. He's a rookie. You want to see what he can do. But Vikings have a lot of defensive ends already. Vikings just brought in Everson Griffin, and we have multiple defensive ends where really him being on IR kind of benefits the Vikings when you take a look at it, because we don't want to cut Hercules Mataafa. We don't want to cut Kenny Willekes, but we're going to have to cut these players because we have so many defensive ends already. But with that being said, I want to see Janarius Robinson play his rookie season, so hopefully he can be back after the first half of the season. Vikings aren't going to be rushing to bring Janarius Robinson back, but hopefully this injury is not as bad as it looking like it is. Alexander Madison has not practiced all week with a undisclosed injury. I wouldn't expect to see Alexander Madison. In fact, I'm almost positive the Vikings will not play Alexander Madison this Friday, as you want to keep him healthy for the regular season. Dalvin Cook is our core back. He's the best player on this Vikings team, but Alexander Madison brings that 1-2 punch in the backfield, and when he comes out there, you can let him play a series, and the Vikings will still give him 20 carries if they have to. Next up, we have Anthony Barr, who is also undisclosed injury. Is questionable to play. Vikings, again, they're not going to rush back Anthony Barr. He's a core player in this Vikings defense. There's no reason to play him in the preseason, especially when you have linebackers like Chad Surratt and Troy Dye, who you really continuing to want to see what they really can do. Same with Nick Vigil, who will start week 1, but you want to see what these players can do. Christian Darrisaw, first-round draft pick from the Minnesota Vikings, drafted out of Virginia Tech to be a day 1 starter at left tackle to replace Riley Reiff. Christian Darrisaw has not practiced really at all with the Vikings so far. And on top of that, we haven't seen him at all in preseason, so there's no way Christian Darrisaw is going to start at left tackle. Actually, it's possible. If Christian Darrisaw is healthy, and this is not as bad of an injury as it seems, because it's expected that he will be back week 1, I don't think Vikings are going to rush him back this game, but if they decide to play Christian Darrisaw, maybe he'll win the left tackle role over over Rashad Hill. It's possible that that will happen, but the way it's looking right now, we've seen a lot more of Rashad Hill. Rashad Hill is a longtime veteran. I would expect to see him start week 1 at left tackle. That doesn't mean we're not going to see a lot of Christian Darrisaw in his rookie season. He's a first-round draft pick, and the Vikings will play Christian Darrisaw a lot this season, but maybe not a starter right out of college into his first game, even though that's what he was expected to be. And then we have Justin Jefferson with a shoulder injury. Justin Jefferson missed last week's game against the Indianapolis Colts with an injury. Now, it's mostly because, again, the Vikings didn't want to rush back Justin Jefferson. However, now he's questionable and has been practicing with the team. So I would expect to see Justin Jefferson back to play this week's game against the Kansas City Chiefs. Justin Jefferson, again, another player you don't need to rush back. However, you would want to, because we haven't got to see any of Justin Jefferson in preseason, and you want to give him some reps. Let him warm up because he has a big role to fill this next season. You want him to warm up and be ready to play week 1 against the Cincinnati Bengals at full capacity. Dede Westbrook, knee injury, another player we have not seen at all in preseason. Dede Westbrook, wide receiver, taken out of the Jacksonville Jaguars free agency. Dede Westbrook is questionable to play, and the Vikings should play him, as we really have no idea who our third best wide receiver is at this moment. James Lynch, second-year player out of Baylor, defensive tackle, backup defensive tackle at the 3-tech position, is questionable to play with an ankle injury. I do think the Vikings will, if they can play James Lynch, rush him back to play. Tyler Conklin missed last week with an injury as well and is questionable to play with a hamstring injury. Tyler Conklin, big role to fill. Vikings should try to rush him back, give him some reps, as he's now going into that tight end 2 role after Kyle Rudolph has been cut by the Vikings. So Vikings should play Tyler Conklin, as he has a big role to fill. Xavier Woods, free safety for the Minnesota Vikings, taken out of the Cowboys free agency, is questionable to play with a undisclosed injury. Xavier Woods, another player we have not seen at all in preseason because he has been injured, and you want to keep him healthy. Longtime veteran, going to be a huge player in this Vikings defense, and you do want to keep him healthy. So Vikings, whether you play him or not, it doesn't matter. It's Xavier Woods. You want him to be healthy week 1. Chaz Surratt, Vikings drafted in the 3rd round, is also questionable to play with an undisclosed injury. Had a great week last week, and I want to see more of Chaz Surratt if he is ready to play. Chaz Surratt right now, drafted in the 3rd round, is playing for Nick Vigel's role at the weak side linebacker position. He will not win it, as Nick Vigel's a longer veteran, and Vikings just don't play rookies out of college. It just doesn't happen, so I would not expect to see Chaz Surratt start week 1. However, eventually in the season, he might win the starting role. Michael Pierce is also questionable to play with a calf injury, another player you want to keep healthy. Michael Pierce is your star nose tackle, and he's going to make his regular season debut against the Cincinnati Bengals, and you want to keep him healthy. So there's no need to play Michael Pierce, especially when you have Armon Watts, who can back him up and play very well. Cole Cabral, another player, undisclosed injury. So that really wraps up our injury report right there. And a lot of core players. I mean, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Anthony Barr, these are big players on this Vikings team, and hopefully they will all be healthy to play week 1. It is expected that they will, so that's all right. So now taking a look at this preseason matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs, we have a lot of questions still. Who's going to be our right defensive end? Who's going to be our right guard? Who's going to be our 3rd best wide receiver? We really don't know. These are all questions going into the preseason that we had for this Vikings team that we still don't have answered. This preseason game will answer those questions. Last week, we got to see 2 players at right guard that we were very relieved to see. That was Oli Udoh and Wyatt Davis. Oli Udoh has moved from right guard or right tackle to right guard and had a phenomenal week last week. Oli Udoh was the top-ranked player by the Minnesota Vikings by PFF last week. Yes, that's top-ranked player, not right guard. Top-ranked player was Oli Udoh after he made his debut at right guard. He's almost locked down the role. However, when Wyatt Davis stepped in, Wyatt Davis, 3rd round draft pick from the Minnesota Vikings out of the Ohio State in this year's draft, stepped in and looked very good as well. So we have 2 right guards who are playing for that position right now. Wyatt Davis played right guard in college, was the top-ranked guard out of the 2020 class by PFF, and then Oli Udoh, who just transitioned into the spot, 3rd year with the Minnesota Vikings. 2 very young players who are both playing for that right guard role, and we are so relieved to see this. I can't even stress how happy I am that we don't have to see Dakota Dozier or Drew Samia start at guard again. They're gone. They're done. Drew Samia might still be on the roster. Dakota Dozier might still be on the roster, but they're not going to be starting this year. And that's what we're very happy to see, as Ezra Cleveland also looks pretty good at the left guard position. But also on the offensive line, like we've said so far, left tackle is still up for debate. I mean, Rashad Hill is not looking very good at left tackle, but he is a longtime veteran. He's the oldest player on this Vikings offensive line. As a 29-year-old, will be 29-year-old, Rashad Hill, left tackle, is expected to start week 1 with the Minnesota Vikings, as Christian Darrisaw, first-round draft pick, has been injured. However, if Christian Darrisaw does play, this is also another spot where he can step into the starting role, and I would be very happy to see him be healthy and take the starting role over Rashad Hill. That's the offensive line right there. We still don't know who our left tackle and right guard are going to be, and this game should answer that question. I want to see a lot of Oli Udoh, and I want to see a lot of Wyatt Davis to really see who can win that role over. And then also on the offense, we have our third best wide receiver. We still don't know who our third best wide receiver is. We know who our third best receiver is, and that would be Irv Smith Jr. We don't know who our third best wideout is. It could be Chad Beebe, KJ Osborne, D.D. Westbrook, or Ihmir Smith-Marsette. These are all 4 wide receivers that I would expect to see a lot of in the Kansas City Chiefs game, as we really need to see who is our best wide receiver. As taking a look at it right now, it is Chad Beebe. The 5'10", 180-pound receiver is our third best wide receiver. But when you take a look at Chad Beebe's tapes, he's getting wide open catches. I mean, he's this small guy. Defenses just aren't protecting him. So that's the reason why he's performing as great as he is. You look at last week, he had back-to-back wide open catches. I don't know how these defenses don't even see this guy running, but he's just left open all the time. But when you take a look at it, he's had barely any contested catches. He hasn't had any excellent plays after the catch. So is Chad Beebe our third best wide receiver? I mean, he's a slot guy at best. KJ Osborne, D.D. Westbrook, and Ihmir Smith-Marsette, these are players that we haven't got to see a whole lot of in preseason. Ihmir Smith-Marsette, when we did get to see him, was not good except on the special teams return game. But KJ Osborne and D.D. Westbrook, both these 2 players could win that third best wide receiver role over Chad Beebe and be our third receiver to back up both Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen on the outside. Also with that, we have our special teams. We still don't know who our kick returner and punt returner are. We have 3 players currently playing for the kick and punt return roles, and that is KJ Osborne, second-year player out of Miami, Ihmir Smith-Marsette, rookie out of Iowa State, and then Amir Abdullah, longtime veteran with the Minnesota Vikings. These are 3 players who are playing for that kick and punt return role that it's going to be a competition, and I'm excited to see what these players can do. Ihmir Smith-Marsette did have a great punt return last week, and hopefully we can continue to see that going into this week. And last but not least position that is opening on the starting lineup is, of course, the defensive end position. Vikings just brought in Everson Griffen, bringing more competition. Who's going to start at defensive end alongside Danielle Hunter? Right now, I say there are 3 players competing for that spot. That is DJ Wonnum, second-year player out of South Carolina, Stephen Weatherly, longtime veteran with the Vikings, and Everson Griffen, 13-year veteran in the NFL. He's going into his 13th season. Those are 3 players who are playing for that right defensive end role to play alongside Danielle Hunter. Danielle Hunter, excellent defensive end, but who's going to be alongside him to help him to apply pressure on the quarterback? It really can be any 3 of these players, and it's up for grabs right now. My money's on Everson Griffen simply because of how long he's been under this Adam Zimmer, Mike Zimmer, and Andre Patterson defense. So I would expect to see more of Everson Griffen and possibly start, and we could get the Danielle Hunter, Everson Griffen duo back. That's what I really want to see. But Everson Griffen might not be 2017 Everson Griffen, might not even be close to 2017 Everson Griffen. But as long as he looks like a starter, that's what we're asking for. We're asking for this defensive end to just look like a starter in the NFL. And if they can, Vikings will have a lot better pass rush than they had last year. Just having Danielle Hunter back alone is a huge improvement from last year's defense with the Minnesota Vikings. And now to make my predictions, I predict that our starting defensive end, Everson Griffen, will win the starting role. Oli Udoh will win the starting role at right guard. Rashad Hill will be our starting left tackle going into week 1. However, with that being said, even though Rashad Hill will be our starting left tackle week 1, I'd expect Christian Darrisaw by week 4 to take that left tackle position. I don't have high hopes with Rashad Hill. He's an older guy, but I'm a big Rashad Hill fan. I've been backing him as a backup left tackle. As a starter, don't think he's ready for the starting position, and I don't think he'll ever be ready for the starting position. Our third best wide receiver, it's hard to say because KJ Osborne was supposed to be this breakout player this preseason. We haven't got to see really much of KJ Osborne at all. So I'd say our third best wide receiver is still going to be Chad Beebe because he's going to get the wide open catches as he always does. And then our starting kick returner, I would say our starting kick returner would be Amir Abdullah, and our starting punt returner would be Ihmir Smith-Marsette. I don't think KJ Osborne is going to win the starting role. I'll say that right now. From what we've seen as KJ Osborne as a kick and punt returner, has not been good. So I don't think he's going to win the starting role, and I'd be fine with him not winning the starting role, especially after that rookie season that he had. So those are my predictions on who's going to win these starting positions that are up for grabs right now for the Vikings. And now taking a look at it though, how will the Vikings perform against the Kansas City Chiefs? I don't care if the Vikings win or lose. I'm focused on how these Vikings players can play, because that really matters when it goes into the regular season. Is our offense going to perform well? Can our backups do anything? Can these wide receivers look like NFL wide receivers? Because so far they haven't. These backup quarterbacks have looked awful. These wide receivers have been catching no catchable catches. The only people looking good is our running backs. Last week, Amir Abdullah looked great. Week before that, AJ Rose looked great. We only have depth at the running back position. Our offensive line has done an awful job as well. This is what I'm focused on. This is what we need to see this Vikings offense do. Can they look good? Because we haven't seen it so far. Maybe they can come out and look amazing this week. Who knows? But I do want to see a lot more of Kellen Mond, rookie out of Texas A&M, drafted in the 3rd round. I would expect to get 2 total touchdowns this year, with one of the touchdowns and first offensive touchdown, preseason offensive touchdown for the Minnesota Vikings, to be a short pass to Amir Abdullah. With that being said, I do think that the Vikings will still end up losing this game. I'd expect the Vikings to lose something like 17-14. I don't expect that to be a high-scoring game at all, especially when you take a look at both of the depth on the Vikings offense and the Chiefs offense. I don't expect it to be a high-scoring game at all. Vikings losing by less than 7 points in this matchup. Let me know what y'all think.